Hello, and thank you for joining us for this week's edition of It's Your City. I'm your host, Courtney Bloomer. Today's show is brought to you by Sassafras Eclectic Food Joint. They are hosting their Breakfast with B. Arthur on Mother's Day. Be sure to get your tickets well in advance. This fantastic event always sells out. Our guest on the show today is, once again, welcome back, Carson City Sheriff Kenny Furlong. Welcome.
How you doing? Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Thanks for being back with us again. We have a lot of things to talk about today that are going on here in Carson City.
There are certainly a lot of things happening here in Carson City. I've been working with different organizations on several of these priorities. It's a major focus and concern of our citizens, a lot of these issues. You can pick on the traffic problems, the pedestrian problems, the incidents of the vaping trend that's going all the way across the country, and here, of course, we can talk about the homelessness here in the community.
Absolutely. So let's get started on that list. Since you brought up traffic first, let's talk about that because you guys have a new traffic enforcement division.
We were funded last year for a new traffic enforcement division, and when I say last year, it was actually about 15 months ago. It has just reached its goal. It is fully staffed now as of January, and I'm very, very pleased with it. We brought back one of our sergeants that is just an excellent, focused leader in that traffic management department. Our goal is zero fatalities in this community. That's what we're striving for. Some people may say it's unrealistic, but it is realistic. We can achieve this by drawing attention to people to pay attention when they're driving. And as I get it, the number one issue that comes back to me is, why are they taking my picture when I get a citation? Well, that's a part of the process now. And so it's important that people remember, be careful when you're driving, pay attention when you're driving, avoid the ticket, and avoid your picture being attached to that ticket.
What are some of the things that the traffic division is seeing? What are some of the main concerns that they see when they're out there? What are people getting tickets for?
It's really interesting because we have an automated program that collects all of our traffic complaints, and all of our traffic enforcement officers and our supervision in the patrol side of the house, they get a report every week of where all of the complaints in town are coming from. So they're able to move their resources to where those problems are. Second to that is we look at where are our most accidents and where are fatalities. Those areas where you have fatalities and the most amount of accidents, if you get pulled over by one of these traffic enforcement officers, it's not going to be a break, it's not going to be a warning, it's going to be a ticket. Highway 50 East going to Dayton has just been horrible. Absolutely horrible.
They drive that every day. It's a really bad stretch of road.
It's a return to 10 years ago when we thought we had it back under control, but now we're back into just deaths along that highway. And it's scary. It's literally scary to drive that highway. So we want people to pay that extra attention. And if that's where our fatalities are occurring, that's where that enforcement is likely to be.
And you guys are working on some traffic issues all around town, though. People shouldn't feel like, oh, we're on Highway 50, and so this is where the sheriffs are going to be.
That's exactly it. They move their resources to where the complaints are at, or where they're being called in, and I've been very, very appreciative of Sergeant Cullen, who manages the unit now, because in the last couple of months I've seen it's a map that they receive, and there's dots all over the map where the complaints are coming from. The fewer the dots, the better, and I'm seeing smaller and smaller and smaller, and that leads me to a belief that we're on the right track. Second to that is we've seen the plateau. We hit a peak several months ago of traffic accidents in the community. We're seeing it starting to slide, so it's very, very possible we're on the right track. I don't really want to call it a success yet, but it looks like we have some trend data that says we're on the right track to reducing those accidents. If you reduce the quantity of accidents, you'll reduce the number of injured people, and if you reduce the number of injuries, hopefully we won't have a fatality.
Zero fatalities is always the goal. That's a statewide, actually nationwide initiative to have zero fatalities, and I know it's something that Carson City is definitely on board with.
Absolutely.
So let's also talk about some issues that are facing primarily our community's youth. And that is also another nationwide problem, vaping.
Vaping has taken on, and I'm using this word intentionally, it is a fad. It is a cool thing. It is something for everyone to do. And we've seen this growing over the last several years, and we've also seen the devastation that comes along with it. It is challenging for our schools. It is challenging for our families. This vaping thing blew up. And for the folks that are watching us today that are older, this goes back to those days of the commercials all over your TV, the Camel,
The Marlboro Man, and yeah.
the candy cigarettes for Halloween. This is larger than that, and it doesn't matter where you go in this country. That has just blown up all right in everybody's faces, and we're now trying to get the information out to everybody. The health hazards are very, very similar to, if not the same as, cigarette smoking. Well, then we have the other problem that is tied right to it, and that's the infusion of other things into the vaping devices. And we're talking about the THC, the marijuana. Not necessarily coming from any place that you might know or you can think of, but very often through the black market. And these THC infused devices are very popular. And we know that. Children do things because they're kids. They see something and they want to try it. Well, this problem is everywhere, and it has spread across the country probably at about the same rate as the vaping devices, and it's causing severe, severe problems. Here in Carson, we all know that we had an incident in January that resulted in a bad sale. 4 kids want to buy infused products, and the person who came to sell them ended up getting shot. That's a real challenge here. It's not something new, and most people know it. We're not talking about the effect of the drug. We're talking about that community culture, and it's challenging to us here in Carson. It's sad that children will make such a horrendous mistake. And I want to emphasize that it's a horrendous mistake that's going to follow them the rest of their lives.
Right.
It's so we are out. We are educating. I sat with the Joint Board of Supervisors in the school district. Wonderful presentation to our governing bodies here in this town on vaping, what it means, how it's done. These are the devices, and these are the horrific implications that is taking all the way across the United States.
So what are the steps moving forward to combat this?
I think that number one, the steps are being taken. We're cutting off age levels. You have to be an adult in order to purchase the devices. Number two, you have to educate the kids to the dangers of these devices. And in some cases, they've even you can open up to YouTube and see a device explode. I don't know if it's staged, I don't know if it's real, but it does explode. You've got to teach people the dangers of what it is that they're putting in their hands, and most importantly, what they're putting in their bodies. We have very, very aggressive enforcement here in this town. And now with our as school resource officers, we have now 5 of them assigned to the schools. We are out constantly educating teachers, educating administrators, educating our officers what to look for, how to look for, so that we can stop this trend here. I think that education and prevention are the $1 million checks in your pocket. That's where you make the most amount of money. But for those that just decide, you know what, I'm not going to listen, then you obviously have to go to the enforcement side of the house. And even on that, our resources are bending.
Right. It's a widespread problem for sure.
It's a widespread problem.
Another widespread problem facing our community is homelessness. Just a couple days ago, a homeless person was found deceased in a van here in Carson City. Very sad story.
Very sad.
Talk a little bit about not necessarily that specific incident, because I know there are some issues around privacy and whatnot, but about the homeless problem in general and how you see your officers as playing a role in that.
The homeless problem in Carson, if you were to enter into a conversation, you almost have to categorize. What type of homeless are you talking about? Probably 1 to 2 events a year, we will find homeless people deceased. They just died in their camps, died in their cars, sometimes as a result of the elements, sometimes as a result of just lack of care and so on. In fact, we still have one open on the books from many years back where we can't figure out who that deceased was. And that's horrible. That really is. Some family has lost a family member and they have no idea. That's what happens in these worst case homeless camp type homelessness populations. They move around very, very well, and very often, especially in our cold winter times, they end up passing. And in the worst case scenarios, as the one you just cited, they don't get found for a long period of time because we're not always looking for somebody who has passed away in an obscure spot.
Right.
Other portions of the homeless population, we have services here in Carson. They open up early, just before winter kicks on, and it goes all the way through the winter. Our churches have been so gracious to this community to provide homeless shelters for that population that is on the streets and needs a place to be. That works about 90% of the time because some of that homeless population just is not going to cooperate there. The other piece that a lot of folks just, they don't really, it doesn't make the circuit is that homeless population who is homeless by circumstance. Maybe my wife and I and our children, for whatever reason, we've lost our home. We're now living with others or living in shanties because circumstance drew us homeless. In those cases, Health and Human Services here in Carson, our church network, we have resources that are out there that are willing to help you get your feet back on the ground.
Right, Fish and Ron Wood.
Fish, Ron Wood, Circles, all of these agencies. Nobody wants to see anybody left behind. But it seems like it kind of goes down and then something happens and it's all the way back up in the news again. Finding somebody who is homeless, deceased, it happens about twice a year here, once to twice a year. And the saddest piece of that is they're normally not found for long periods of time.
Right, and these people are sort of sliding through the cracks in society.
They're sliding through the cracks. We know that mental health, alcohol abuse, drug abuse are very often significant impacts on that homeless population. It's not always true, but especially your chronic, the person that's been living on the street for 4, 5, 7 years, we see those challenges. They provide real stressors for our resources because how can I get help to you if you won't take it, or if you're not willing to come out of that rut that you're in and actually improve on your life, get you back working, get you back with a shelter, have a roof over your head, have a life and friends and entertainment. It's a real challenge, and for the most part that we see it in the downtown corridor of Carson.
Right.
And so much money has been spent on that downtown corridor to improve the aesthetics of it. We want people to come down there, enjoy a meal, enjoy the downtown. But most of the homeless resources are also downtown.
Well, and I think, part of the problem is making it pretty is great, but we're not addressing the root cause of this problem.
And I think that's where a lot of governing bodies, and I'm reading and hearing about it everywhere. I just attended a meeting here in Carson where they're stepping up to those. We need to go to the core of the problem. You can read about it in California. This is not a Carson City issue. Again, most of these issues, I guess Carson City is just like every other hometown America town.
In many ways.
In many, many ways. The struggles and the stressors that we're seeing across the country are also here. We're not immune from it. And that's a positive statement because it's too easy for people to go, oh, that problem doesn't occur here. So
right, we're different. That doesn't happen in our town.
Yes, we don't have that kind of a problem. Those types of attitudes, those are the cancers. Because then your challenges fester. And as you said, in the worst case scenarios, somebody comes up missing from another state and we find them deceased long after they passed.
Yeah, very difficult very difficult situation for the homeless population here in Carson. And of course, as the area evolves and housing prices increase, that's becoming a more salient issue for many people.
Right. And there's other challenges along that path. Carson City's a beautiful little town. Many of our residents live on properties that are owned by people not here in this state of Nevada. And a lot of the previously homeless encampments that are around town, it was difficult to move those people out of there because the city doesn't own that property. And so we reach out. I know that the mayor has reached out. How can we create change at the core of the issue and make it a better community? That's not an easy answer. And I don't think it's something you do this month and woohoo, we're done for the year.
No, I think it's an ongoing long-term challenge, and it's definitely something you guys have boards and committees who deal specifically with this issue.
Specifically with it, and that's I want to give the Carson City Health Department a big pat on the back because they have very heavy concentrated staff that deal with people who have resource needs, homelessness, poverty, things like this, where they can help. But you got to stand up and say, I'm willing to take the help and make myself into something better, which is the real champions in our towns.
Absolutely. Sheriff Kenny Furlong, thank you for being here with us today and sharing some of these challenges and the way that you are addressing them in cooperation with the rest of the community. So
I
thank you
appreciate
for
it.
that.
This is a great town, and it's your town.
Yeah, it's your city. Thank you to all of you for joining us this week. Today's show was brought to you by Sassafras Eclectic Food Joint on Old Hot Springs Road, right here in Carson City. Check out their very eclectic menu of fantastic foods, and don't forget to buy your tickets to Breakfast with Bee happening on Mother's Day at Sassafras. If your business is interested in sponsoring a future edition of It's Your City, please contact Darla at the address shown on your screen. I'm your host, Courtney Bloomer. We'll see you next week.